Senator Tom Cotton. He's a leading Republican on the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, also an Iraq War veteran. Senator, thanks very much for joining us. What can you tell us about the search for these 3 American contractors in Baghdad?
Well, Wolf, it's still underway, and I don't want to do anything that would prejudice or interfere with that. I will say this. I spent several months patrolling Al-Dura district in Baghdad in 2006 with the 101st Airborne. It's a tough neighborhood. There's a lot of militias operating there, to including a lot of Shiite militias, which are backed by Iran. And it may not be coincidental that 3 Americans have gone missing in Baghdad just 2 days after President Obama got a hostage deal with Iran that showed the world that there's a price on the head of Americans in every country around the world, especially countries where Iran dominates. That's one reason why this hostage deal was so bad.
I want to talk about that in a moment, but what you're suggesting is maybe this was an Iranian-backed initiative to take these 3 Americans?
We don't know that yet, Wolf. The coming days will probably play it out, and we'll see. But Iran does dominate many of the militias that are very large and influential in Baghdad. And we just paid a huge price to get back hostages from Iran. And Iran still has at least 2 more Americans held hostage, maybe more. We have taught Iran's leaders and the world a very bad lesson, that there's a price on the head of Americans to be held hostage. And even if these 3 Americans weren't taken hostage by Iranian-backed militias, it's a more dangerous world for all Americans all around the world.
So you
today.
wouldn't have done this deal to free Jason Rezaian and these other Americans?
Look, my heart goes out, as does every American, when I see the videotape of Jason Rezaian and Amir Hekmati and Saeed Abedini coming back to their families. But let's be clear. These were not prisoners. This was not a prisoner swap. They were hostages. They were held unjustly for no reason. We just released and pardoned 7 people who were duly convicted or pending trial in an American court, and delisted 14 different people from international extradition requests. In addition to going forward with the nuclear deal, giving Iran tens of billions of dollars, a vast nuclear infrastructure. I don't think it's a coincidence that those 2 things happened on the same day, and it sets a very bad precedent for our dealings with Iran throughout the region and all around the world.
So what would you have done to get back those Americans?
Well, first off, I wouldn't have started down the negotiations while Iran was holding Americans hostage. I would have demanded at the very beginning, if I was going to engage in any kind of negotiations with Iran, that they release all Americans, to include accounting for the whereabouts of Robert Levinson. But remember, going back to before he was even elected, President Obama was talking about extending a hand to dictators without precondition. The chief regime that he had in mind was Iran.
Senator, stand by. We have more to discuss. There's a lot of breaking developments happening right now, much more with Senator Tom Cotton right now. I want to get your reaction. $1.7 billion finishing up this claim that the Iranians had against the U.S. What's your reaction?
The roadside bombs that Iran sent to Iraq to blow up over 500 American soldiers cost a lot less than $1.7 billion. The troops that they're supporting in Syria right now, slaughtering innocents and undermining the entire region, only cost a few $100s a month. The terrorists that they support in Hezbollah only cost tens of thousands of dollars on a weekly or monthly basis. $1.7 billion is an astonishing figure. And as Secretary Kerry said, first, this was not part of the nuclear deal. This was a standalone agreement that didn't have to be undertaken, unless it's just part of the ransom that we had to pay to get innocent Americans back from Iranian captivity. And second, remember, this was a deal, if it was in fact about a weapons agreement before the Islamic Revolution in 1979, that we made with the pro-American government of Iran, that was then overthrown by a violent revolution led by the Ayatollahs. And we're rewarding them now by giving them back that previous regime's money with interest. Secretary Kerry talked about interest payments being required under the law. I'm not sure which law he's referring to, but it sounds to me like he's more interested in being the lawyer for the government of Iran than he is for standing up, for instance, as you say, Wolf, for the rights of those 52 Americans who still have lots of claims against Iran for the terrorism and the captivity in which they held them.
Well, you went to Harvard Law School, right?
I did.
So you know something about the International Claims Court in The Hague. What he's suggesting is the $1.7 billion that the U.S. is now going to give Iran for the arms that were never delivered. It could have been a lot more if the claims court in The Hague would have adjudicated it. Could have been $6 billion, he's suggesting. So the U.S. got a bargain.
Well, I'm pretty confident that we've been able to avoid that kind of adjudication for 36 years now, that we've got very good lawyers in our State Department that could prevent that if it is, in fact, about an arms deal that was never consummated and not about something else.
So where do you go from here? There's this nuclear deal. It's about to be implemented. You voted against it. All the Republicans voted against it. There's nothing really you can do at this point, right?
Well, we can move to impose sanctions on Iran for their other nefarious activities, like their support for terrorism, their regional aggression, their human rights abuses. The House of Representatives has tried to do just that.
But presumably the president would veto all of that.
Well, he and John Kerry have said all along that they're not removing sanctions for non-nuclear related activities. In fact, they've purported to impose new sanctions today. Now, I have my doubts about the seriousness of those sanctions, since we just released 21 people or lifted warrants against their arrest for violating previous sanctions. But you can impose new sanctions for their other activity and try to stop the aggression that they're undertaking throughout the Middle East.
Senator Cotton, thanks very much for